What is going on out there, peeps? I want to take this time to welcome everybody back to part 2 of my interview with Chris Marcus from Arcadia Economics. But before I get into the second part, I just want to remind everybody to please hit the thumbs up button. And if you're not a subscriber, please do so, because when you do, it helps out the channel, and I surely do appreciate it. If you think about buying gold and silver, go to our friends over there at Money Metals Exchange. The link is down below in the description. If you are a first-time buyer and you spend more than $100, use promo code Pimpy, P-I-M-P-Y, and you will get a free half ounce of silver. Also, I will leave the link to Chris Marcus's YouTube channel. I encourage you guys to go on over there and check him out, Arcadia Economics. He has a lot of great news regarding silver. And he just has a great channel all the way around. And then just tell him Pimpy sent you, okay? So let's get into part 2. And joining me today is Chris Marcus from Arcadia Economics. You brought something up on your show that I had not paid attention to. You said our premiums are higher now than they were when silver was much higher during the silver squeeze. Is that right?
Said want to be specific because depending on the products, but I believe the junk silver premiums have already gone over very close to where they were with silver squeeze. And I mean, there's most stuff you can't get right now. Last time I talked to Andy Schechtman, I said, if somebody says I want 1,000 ounces of silver, can you fill that? He's like, yeah, we can fill it. But I mean, I think he said Britannias and Philharmonics are you can't get right now. I mean, these aren't like some numismatic products. That's, the major stuff. Things are unavailable. Premiums are spiked higher. And actually, the reason that I compare the premiums is because if you actually look at what happened silver squeeze weekend, they didn't run out of metal, but it was just the amount that had been hedged got purchased. They weren't prepared for that. So that surge, but now you're seeing the premiums go up. And this is at the same time, the other thing Schechtman mentioned was that, he's getting calls from people. They're like, I just want my money out of the banks now. And rightfully so.
Sure.
And that's why all these pieces, I get it, people, some people just want to know when's silver going to go up. Let me know. All right, I'll tell you. But if you want to, at least for, if people are wondering how much time do I have left or where does it look like we are, that's what I'm at least trying to put the context on. Or if people are saying, hey, is silver really manipulated here? The clues so that you don't have to take my opinion, but then you can examine and have, because the banks aren't going to tell you this stuff.
Well, it's funny because I remember during a silver squeeze, retailers are shutting down and everybody's in naked negatives. And I was like, yeah, that's a good thing for us anyways. For the retail side, they're being sold out. Unfortunately, they were sold out past what they had and they had to find a way to recoup that. But that should give you an indication that people were taking it seriously. There are more people, in my opinion, today that are more educated and more involved with investing into physical gold and silver than ever before. It's still a small number, but I think people are a lot more wiser. And Andy brought this up one time during a conversation. He said, even when the prices drop down, nobody's getting scared. Nobody's parting with their physical.
The price goes down, people buy even more because they know it's rigged. They know why it went down. And when you know those two parts, then you can say, oh, I'm buying a $20 bill for $10. Okay, now Jerome Powell said inflation is going to make the boogeyman pop out of left field. So $20 bills are on sale for $5. It's asinine. It's stupid. And, maybe you have to, some people, if you need cash to pay off your bookie next week, then that's where your risk is. But I mean, maybe in wrapping up, the thing I'd leave with is that, all right, I get it. You've had to wait and, stocks are going up, but it's like, what are your alternatives? You like $22 silver? You like negative yielding treasuries? Do you really want to trust in this system where all the Fed governors are getting caught front running their own policy? So I would suggest don't worry about what CNBC or Jim Cramer is saying. Think for yourself. Don't do what I say. Don't do what anybody else says, but
do your own research. That's what I tell them. Don't just take our word. Go out there and research what we're talking about. And for me, a lot of times when I'm talking about some things, I will leave a link to somebody's video, or I will leave a link to an article that I'm reading, because, I tell them maybe I'm misunderstanding what I'm reading, or maybe I'm misunderstanding what I'm hearing, but at least you guys know where the information is coming from and you could go see for yourself. I do that quite often. I just want to ask you a couple of questions. Why should people not be into ETFs as far as gold and silver is concerned versus physically owning it?
Well, if you don't like getting ripped off and having your money stolen from banks, I'd be really careful about SLV. I was actually just about to send you that link again with the evidence file where it explains in quite more detail the dangers of them. These guys are selling silver that they don't have. They're selling the same ounce a lot more than one time. And maybe a short version is that I explained some of these things. It was about a week or two after Silver Squeeze last year to a friend of mine who's a hedge fund manager. And I said, now that you know this, if you own 1 share or 1 million shares of SLV, what would you do? And he just says, I would sell. I would have to sell. And then I asked him, let's say that, would you say that if someone was running a fund that was invested in SLV with customer money, and they heard what I just told you, and they didn't sell every share of that as fast as they could, was there any gray area that would have placed them at fraud risk as a financial fiduciary? And again, he said yes, because the information when you look through it is that glaring. And again, you can take a look at this link. I'm about to upgrade the whole file now to a ton more stuff that's come out since then. So I would be very careful about. I don't own any SLV and don't have any plans to.
I think it was Kitco that said that they don't own enough silver versus the shares that they had. And then all of a sudden we've seen a bunch of people dropping the paper version, selling it on the market to turn around and then go buy the physical. And then what we saw happening in the financial news is like, look, at people are really confident in the economy that they're selling off their gold and silver. I was like, you're just lying. They're selling off the paper side of it to buy the physical side of it. But it didn't keep them from trying to say, look, people are getting out of the safe haven to get into risky assets. They take the information and they just twist it to push their false narrative of what's going on. In my opinion, we see that happen quite often. Cryptocurrencies. What is your feeling on cryptocurrencies?
Well, that's a bit of a sensitive topic these days, because I think the concept of blockchain is something, that I always think of similar to like what Visa or MasterCard does. And anything that is transparent and gets us away from something like the Federal Reserve, I think is good. And my guess is that there will probably be some that hopefully we'll be using that will be, some of the backbone structure of a more honest economy going forward. Although I have a lot of concerns, not as much that, like about the concept, but just some of the people that I see getting involved in. I think there's going to be a lot of people getting burned in the cryptos. Let's even say Bitcoin goes to 100,000 or 1 million, or it becomes something that we're using and is productive to society. I'm very concerned. I had an issue recently where there's a crypto I held on to for a while because I believe in the person running it and that it's a legitimate project. And I've been stunned at how hard, as someone who has a background in finance as an options market maker, the liquidity and how difficult it is and how unreliable some of these sites are. I'm not saying I'm sure there are people who are very savvy at cryptos that know the ways around that, but it is certainly, this is just my experience, other people, but from what I've seen, if this is going to be a part of our system, there's a lot of work to be done, because there are some things that concern me, and maybe that's as best as I can phrase it right now.
Is Bitcoin the new gold? Is Ethereum the new silver?
I don't know that I would make that comparison. I don't know what they are. I mean, I have a good idea of what silver is, what it's used for, why I like it. I see the potential of what these things could be used for, but
I say the same thing. I support the premise, but here's the thing. Gold or silver have intrinsic value. To me, cryptocurrencies are nothing but a digital fiat version. What is really supporting these things? They're only as valuable as people think they are, but one day people are going to wake up and say, these things really have no value, and they're going to crash. But I also tell people, be smart enough to understand that this is an opportunity in which you can make money off these things if you're smart about what you're looking at.
I mean, the way, look at it like this. What is the value of Visa or MasterCard? Well, I mean, there's value there because transmitting money is an essential component. And right, so think about, like, if you just had something that was better than the Federal Reserve, there's trillions of dollars of value in that. So the idea that Bitcoin or a cryptocurrency could provide legitimate, it's something that is needed. It's just my experience has been just find it's very frustrating at this point to, like I can eventually get there, but it requires hours of phone calls, and even the people who are experts, it's hard for me. It's been a struggle for me, which is not to say it's not a valid concept or won't go up in price. Just
my thing is the government's never going to allow anything to compete with their own currency. We have the central bank digital currency, which I think people should fight at every level. If we look at what China's doing with the digital yuan, it has an expiration date on the currency, which means you'll never be able to save, you'll never be able to retire. That'll keep every man, woman, and child in perpetual, enslavement. Think about this. There's no wealth transfer according to the Great Reset. They think that all money should go back to the states because the people should get the money, not the kids, which I think is terrible. And even if they did allow that to happen and you got your money in the central bank digital currency, it has an expiration date on it. So people getting all excited about the ISO 222 system, which is just a messaging center, but you have 5 cryptos that are compliant, but they're also contributing to the central bank digital currency. I say, look, don't get excited about those cryptos. They're part of a bigger problem that's coming up. Who the hell wants currency with the expiration date on it? How can you ever retire? How can you ever save? I mean, this is real dangerous information. We got the guy, Augustin. I play the video all the time. I call him Turtle Man. There's a small clip in which I play. I don't know if you've ever seen it, Chris. Have you ever seen him talk about what the digital currency is? Like, give me 1 second. I'm going to play this for you right now. I want to get your opinion, what he says. This will be a quick clip. This is Augustin Karsten. This is the guy from the Bank of International Settlement. This is October the 19th, 2020. He's going to tell you exactly what the central bank digital currency is.
CBDC in particular for the use of general use, we tend to establish the equivalence with cash. And there is a huge difference there. For example, in cash, we don't know, for example, who's using a $100 bill today. We don't know who is using a 1,000 peso bill today. A key difference with the CBDC is that central bank will have absolute control on the rules and regulations that will determine the use of that expression of central bank liability. And also, we will have the technology to enforce that.
If this doesn't wake people up, I don't know what will. He's saying that with cash, they have no idea who has it or what people are doing with it. But with the central bank digital currency, not only will the central banks have absolute control over what it is that we do with the money, but they will have the tools to enforce that. What happens if all of a sudden they want to continue pushing this climate change agenda and they say, we're going to program the central bank's digital currency so that you can only buy items and products and services from companies that we like. And that's forcing companies around our nation to fall in line with their agenda. Because if you don't, they could technically put you out of business and bankrupt you just by programming the central bank's digital currency and prohibiting it to be used from a store that you own. That's really putting a lot of control and a lot of power into the hands of our very own government that nobody trusts at this moment. Our Constitution would just be wiped away, because if you speak out against the government and they don't like it, they can fine you or they can block your money. They can end your Second Amendment rights just by programming a central bank's digital dollar to prevent you from buying guns or ammo. Essentially, the government could force you to do whatever you want. So you can imagine if they have that kind of power and control over your money and they program it, you don't have access to your money. They could do that. That's what the central bank digital currency does. So you can understand why that's a major concern for a lot of people. You're going to need something outside of the system. That's why I always encourage people to buy gold and silver, because it is outside of the system until people get fed up with it and finally do something about it. This is a one world government they're talking about, and a central bank's digital currency. Well, that's the one world currency. Here's the other thing you'll love about this, Chris. You can sell your gold and silver and get central bank digital currency for it, but guess what you can't do? You cannot spend your central bank digital currency to buy gold and silver. Why do you suppose that is?
Well, I mean, we know why that is, and these people aren't trying to help you. They're not your friends, and that's basically what I would say to that fella.
Before we close up here, I'm sure people have asked this a million times, but I can't help it because I want to ask too. In your opinion, what should be the true value of gold and silver?
Well, I guess it depends on which day's money supply, but I'll put it like this. I understand I do a show and I'm very careful because I know people are going to take certain things the way they do. My guess is that before this is all said and done, you'll see numbers that are beyond what people think is possible. And even for the people who are frustrated with the wait, at least in terms of what your gold or silver will be able to do, it's my strong belief that you will be stunned. And just imagine if Bitcoin went from $1 to 60,000 or wherever it's at now over the last 10 years. Silver, if it just does a 40x, is at $1,000. And then consider what the people with the money supply are doing. And so I don't know that it's going to be, but in terms of what your silver will buy, I certainly think it's going to be worth the wait. And I feel more confident every second of life I watch unfold.
Yeah, 96% of my money is in gold and silver. I tell people I do have some exposure when it comes to cryptocurrencies. It's not that I don't support what cryptocurrencies are trying to do. It's just I don't trust governments from finding some stupid excuse or creating some false flag event that gets crypto shut down but forces us into the central bank digital currency, which is what we don't want to see happening. But I'm also noticing that every country around the world has now came up with their own central bank digital currency, and it's being pushed onto people. I could tell you that in Bahamas, the central bank digital currency was already launched, but something happened, and they have been down now for 3 weeks. So if your entire economy and your entire livelihood is attached to the central bank digital currency and it goes down and you can't get access to your central bank digital currency, how do you buy food? How do you pay rent? How do you pay your bills? How do you get gas? These are the concerns that people should have. If people want to look it up, they can go on and Google it or Yahoo it or whatever it is you do. You could go on there and look up the Bahamas central bank digital currency. It's called D Cash, like the letter D, Cash, CASH, and see that it might still be down. I haven't followed up on it, but it was down for over 2 weeks. So my question was, if they're 100% cashless society, how were they managing when the system was down? I mean, this may sound like a simplistic question to some people, but it's truly something that people should be asking, the what ifs.
I agree, and it's some days a daunting task, but I think the more you ask those what ifs now, then the nice part about that is that it's like being prepared for anything, and then when it happens, you can end up having things go a bit better because you did take that time to do that. And not to alarm people, but I would suggest that yes, it is a time to really start taking some of these things seriously.
The lesson from 2008 is people, when the markets crash, they're too big to fail banks. Some people lost 40, 50, 60% of their retirement because the money was invested in the actual stocks. Most people don't realize that. Your 401k, your mutual funds, your IRAs, they're invested into the stock market. So when the stock market crash, you lose a lot of the value that's in your retirement. It doesn't just stay there and continue to accumulate. Its value is only as good as a stock market. They had to use the rest to survive on while they try to get another job. A lot of people were already retired and they had to come out of retirement because the money they were relying on to live off of while they retired was gone. It got wiped out. And many people had to go back to work. had they thought about taking 25, 30% of the retirement and moving into physical gold and silver, they would have been protected.
A lot of people learned that lesson with Bernie Madoff. And I think the people who watched that and studied it are going to get to avoid it. I think it's unfortunate that it's going to happen, but it seems pretty clear where this is headed. And yes, I'm fortunate I didn't have to imagine that. But I think everyone who saw these things coming, it hasn't been the easiest decade, but now it's going to be a lot easier to navigate through some of these things. And that's the advantages of thinking about these things in advance, whether they're easy or not. That's why you do it.
You know, me making a suggestion that they move 25, 30% of their retirement into gold and silver. Is that too much, or is that being conservative? I mean, in your opinion, what do you think?
I mean, it's a personal question that's going to be different for everyone. But, you know, when I left Wall Street, everything I had was in gold and silver. Now, I was also willing to take the ups and downs and go figure out how to start a business in the 10 years. So there's risk to anything. And I'm not saying that's what other people should do. But, I mean, I think the justification for doing, you know, what you feel, not maybe what traditional advice would recommend. I mean, it's not an unreasonable statement you're making. And I've personally gone much farther because it's like, I know what cash is now. And I'm able to wait. If I have to wait 20 years, or maybe if I have children one day and I'm leaving this to them, then I'll know that it'll be there. I mean, I'd still look at what cash is, look at the people who are associated to it, look at what's happening to the supply. And then, you know, talk with your family and your loved ones, or if you have a financial planner, and decide what's right for you. But I understand many people would think what you're suggesting might be unreasonable. I would also say there's a lot of things happening in the world that are a little different than we ever even guessed were possible.
I not only talk the talk, but I walk the walk. I wasn't exaggerating when I said like 96% of my money is into physical gold and silver that I own and have in my possession. If I ever need more money, I just go down to my local gold and silver dealer. I have an arrangement with them. I cash in some of my silver and use the money for whatever I need. But for the most part, I don't keep any money in the bank. I get my money and I keep it in a safe along with my gold and silver. Nothing in the bank, only very bare minimum in order for me to cover my bills, and that's as good as it gets. I don't trust that we won't have a bail-in, and I don't trust that the fiat dollar is not going to crash down to crap before all this is over with, and that we're not going to see the same thing that happened in 2008, but at a much larger scale, in my opinion. Chris, sir, thank you for coming aboard. I know your time is precious. You definitely are all over the place, my friend. So thank you for coming aboard.
Well, I appreciate that. And I mean, I guess it feels like the time certainly to do whatever we all can to help people see what's going on, because it's some tough stuff, but I appreciate you giving me a chance to talk with you and share this with your audience.
Yeah, in the future, I'd love to have you aboard again, if you don't mind. I respect everything that you talk about, everything that you cover. I am a big fan. So, you know, I always tell people, look, just don't listen to me. There's a handful of people I encourage that my subscribers go listen to. You're definitely at the top of my list. You, Lynette Zhang, you know, these are people that each one of you bring a different perspective to precious metals. And I do respect that, and I appreciate all that you do. So again, thank you, sir, for coming aboard.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's kind of you to say that. And thank you for being a voice that's needed at this time as well.
So that's it. That's my interview with Chris Marcus. You can catch him on YouTube, Arcadia Economics. Chris's guests are also some of the most knowledgeable people in the silver industry. They will tell you things that the mainstream media will not. Anyways, again, I want to take this time to thank you for joining me on the show. I know you have plenty of other options, but I do appreciate when you do tune in to listen to me. So that is the show for today, and I want to thank you, and I'll catch you later. I'm out.